Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
We're watching. You're watching
Fanboy,
a fanboy, etc.
FanboyNation.
Dot, I assume Tom.
This story and documentary about a young Yazidi girl named Mediha is very close and personal to my heart in how she has suffered and survived the tragedies of ISIS, primarily known in the West. In the Middle East, they've been called Daesh. And today we have the director, Hasan Oswald, talking to us about her story via the documentary Mediha. Hasan, how are you today?
Hi, good morning. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Listen, thank you for talking to me. When I saw Emma Thompson's name attached to this, I was intrigued as to how a British performer became familiar with a story so close to my heart. Being ethnic Assyrian and her being Yazidi, our people, her directly and my people over there as well, suffered the hands of Daesh.
Yes, Emma's been a friend for years now. She's obviously very active in the human rights sphere in general. And she was tracking our movie, helping out where she could, just in an unofficial way. And then when she came on officially, it just sort of, like you said, you noticed she was on right away. So it's opened up a lot of doors and helped this film reach, a much larger audience. So we're forever grateful for her. And, we thought maybe at the beginning she'd be name only, but she's been very active in helping get this film out there.
Sometimes you need a big name attached to a project to get eyes on it. Unfortunately, that's a situation, but thankfully it worked out.
Yes.
How did you come to find Mediha and understand her story and realize what's going on with the Yazidi people in northern Iraq at the time of Daesh having taken over?
Sure, yeah. So in 2015, I was working on a different project in the region, and my translator was Yazidi. I was familiar with their story. I think much of the Western world got glimpses of the genocide back in 2014 with Sinjar Mountain and the massacre that happened on it. But really, of course, as most of these atrocities do, they leave the headlines very quickly. So I knew about what happened to them, the genocide in 2014, but having a translator that was Yazidi on this other project, after we were done filming, I'd go and we'd have tea with her relatives, her family. So I learned more and more. I didn't have the resources or the skills to go tell that story, a story I knew was going to be difficult to tell. So I sort of shelved it. And then in 2018, I read an article that there were still at the time 3,000 plus he's missing or in ISIS captivity or otherwise missing. So that was sort of the spark that sent me over there. I arrived in Iraq in August 2019, and very quickly, through our producer Annalise Mecca, who was over there before me, very quickly I met Mediha and her brothers. They sort of stole my heart from the first day we met them, similar to, as I'm sure you can see, that charismatic spark she has in the film. That's what we experienced from day one. Of course, she had just returned, so it was a very different Mediha, but she still had that charismatic, again, flame or spark within her that shone through. And she was from day one interested in the cameras, joking, kind of just being a kid. And I had been interested in perhaps telling this story from a unique perspective where the participant tells their story, not just the director. And so I thought, this would be a good time to try that approach. And when we got that first batch of footage back and got it translated, we were just sort of blown away by not only her technical skills with the camera, but just her way with words. And yeah, so we sort of 3 weeks in, we were already recording, and we didn't know what shape the home videos would take that she was recording, but we thought maybe vignettes or creative transition, but it turned out to be 40-50% of the movie.
Wow. And the reason why she's not with us here today is because she's in school. And when education is taken away from you, it's the one thing that you try to strive for, because they can't take education away from you once you've had it.
Yes, school is her everything right now. She was very behind. She's still catching up because of, but she's doing really, really well. She's like a sponge. She's brilliant. She's just, you know, she's now diving headlong into an American education system that is extra foreign to her. But she's doing really, really well. She's studying to get her GED, and then, she's excited to go to college. She now wants to be a human rights lawyer, to help girls like her. So it's spot on. When education is taken away from you, you want nothing more, and that's exactly what she's going through right now.
And now she doesn't have to worry about flying chalk or slippers or teachers yelling at her and calling her names the way they would in Iraq. So, and as some Iraqis are going to be watching this and go, we don't do that. Yes, you do. I remember. We had the teachers in Aramaic class throwing chalk at us. I remember. So, yeah, we make light of the situation because that's what we do in having suffered these tragedies. How is she sleeping? How are her brothers handling this now? Because having been so young in war, and that's all you understand from a very early age, to now having a more comfortable life in the West, it's night and day. It's quiet. There's not shelling constantly going on. You don't have to worry about somebody breaking into your home all the time. Like, what has that mindset done for her, and how has she and her brothers been able to calm down?
Yeah, I think, for her, these first months in America has been the first time that she's had a chance to begin a healing process. It's the first time she's had space. It's the first time she's had, as you said, quiet nights. And so while she's doing really well, and I always tell her, a 19-year-old from Indiana coming to New York, that would be hard for them too. So we're so proud of her. We always tell her that, you're doing so well. This would be hard for anyone, let alone someone who's been through what you've been through. So there's really good days, and then there's some harder days. She's got, psychiatric support now, full health care. So I think that helps a lot as far as, undoing some of the physical scars that she now carries, as well as the mental scars, of course. So I think, it's obviously going to be a very long process. But she has all the support she needs now, and it's certainly beginning, and I would say ahead of schedule as far as how she's taking to this, and how quickly she's sort of taking these first exciting steps.
With a lot of eyes from the West on the East, it's always been, not, I wouldn't say always, but let's say the last 100 so years post Sykes-Picot Agreement, that, oh, that region is just riddled with violence. Oh, it's expected that Yazidis and Kurds and Assyrians and Arabs aren't going to get along. But no one takes into account the way the French and the British decided to draw the borders and create these tensions by putting Kurds and Assyrians on the Iranian side, Kurds and Assyrians and Yazidis on the Iraqi side, some still left in Turkey, some in Syria, some in Lebanon. And the way these borders and communities were divided was to create these tensions initially, so that there was this constant conflict between this tribal mentality, or what they referred to tribal mentality instead of nationalistic ideology, by imposing a nationalism on a people that don't get along with each other. How is that currently being addressed in the Western eyes, or for a Western audience?
For a Western audience, it's being addressed. I mean, ask any Westerner what they think of Iraq, or when I told my friends I was over there for 4 years off and on, they thought I was crazy. Meanwhile, I was in these cities with bowling alleys, malls, nightclubs, and not only that, there's these people are just incredibly welcoming. Um, I always say, turn off the news and go have tea with one of these families. You'll see it's not exactly what your news is portraying. I experienced the same thing in Syria. Of course, there's going to be dangerous areas, Mosul, Al Hol Camp. There was dangerous trips, of course, but as a whole, these countries are not, and these people are not how your Western news are probably portraying them. I will say though, we we made this film and we didn't have any sit down interviews, no talking heads. We it's not that we made the choice not to talk politics or tribal divisions, but we made the choice to tell it from Mediha's perspective because not only is she carrying the camera, but this is her story and her people's story. So had she wanted to talk about the Kurdish Iraqi issue or the Turkish Kurdish issue or the Yazidi Kurdish Iraqi issue, we would have, given her the microphone and ample space to do that. But she did not talk about it because that wasn't relevant to her life at the time we were filming. She wanted to just be a teenage girl in the foothills of a teenage girl in the foothills of Iraq. She's grown, more curious about those political divisions and issues. And I think she does have a future in politics and international law. I really do. But we didn't, we wanted to use Mediha and her story as sort of this love Trojan horse to get people talking about this issue again 10 years on, to get people talking about the Middle East when every weekend there's a new issue grabbing the headlines. So we just wanted to first make the viewer fall in love with Mediha and her brothers, and then hopefully they went home and Googled the Yazidi genocide. Hopefully they went and looked into the Kurdish Iraq divide. So yeah, we just sort of took it from a simple childlike perspective because that was what Mediha was talking about. That was what Mediha was living. And we sort of, we let her take the reins.
Right. It's just interesting to see how this stems back from, beginning in 1915 with the Armenian genocide, where we lost 3.5 million Christians, primarily Armenians, but Assyrians and Levant Greeks. And then on top of that, it led to Cepho and it led to all these other things. And the Yazidis were right alongside us with with these situations. And then to come to where we are today, yet nobody looks at the root cause of these borders being drawn that led to this conflict 100+ years later.
Yeah, and like you said, the Yazidis have been sort of along for this terrible ride the whole time. This is by their count, the 74th genocide. I think what's interesting is Mediha always says that genocide ended 10 years ago, but the genocide continues to this day. And not thus just the genocide, but genocide. She sees her and her brothers as she always says it, she knows there's another Mediha in Gaza and Ukraine. They are the human cost of conflict. Whether it's 100 years ago or 10 years ago, these kids are the human cost of conflict, and they live with what was done, not in their names. They live with this, and the world moves on very quickly if they ever paid attention at all.
Yeah, and I'm glad that she's doing well, and the way she captured this, and if she doesn't go into politics, she could easily become a cinematographer and a documentarian. When you look at her footage as a filmmaker and incorporate about 40 to 50% of her catching everything that she did into your production, how exciting is it for her to realize that just some teenager with a camera has now been able to do what adults have been trying to do for the last 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the most rewarding aspects to this. Seeing her not only regain her voice and some semblance of agency through the camera. She says it was her first friend, her only confidant, her therapist before she knew what a therapist was. She gained confidence through looking at this footage that was coming back and listening to herself talk. And it really was amazing to show her the first few rough cut scenes, to show her the sizzle and just to see the way she lit up. Like, I did that, I did that. It's truly remarkable. And I think that sort of that strength that she gained through the whole process of the beginning process of making the film, it continues. She watches she comes to the US based film festivals and she watches every screening. Sits through three screenings of she's probably seen it 100 times, and people ask her, well, aren't you sick of it? And she says, no, like, it makes me feel powerful, it makes me feel strong. Like, I did that, I was on that, I filmed that, I said those words. So yeah, it's been a source of strength from day one, and now it's just sort of continuing.
And her brothers are doing well, I hope.
Yes, safe and sound, her brothers are doing well.
Good, good. Does she have any family here in the United States, or is it just the three of them?
So the brothers are actually not in the US.
No.
We're working on something for them. She's here. She doesn't have a family. She has distant relatives. There's a Yazidi community in Arizona, in Nebraska, but she chose to settle here in New York. So she's sort of building her own community. She's part of an incredible NGO here called the Russo Project. So she's making a lot of friends, and now she calls them family through that. And then, of course, the filmmaking team is here as well. So yeah, she's sort of building her own little kingdom over here, and she's FaceTimes nonstop with her brothers back home and her community members. But for the time being, yeah, she chose New York as her temporary stomping grounds.
No. I'm glad she's safe. I'm glad the brothers are okay. Hopefully, they'll get here and be reunited, since it seems to be that there's the only three of them, minus distant relatives here and there.
Yes.
Yeah. As a filmmaker that takes on a project like this and following such young people that are essentially adults in young people bodies because of what they had to go through at such an early age, what do you learn about yourself as a filmmaker? And how does your life perspective change with what we've often identified as first world problems? You know, they got my coffee wrong, whatever, and they added extra cream or, some nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, she's the most resilient person I've ever met. The Yazidis are the most resilient people I've ever met. But her as an individual, indie doc filmmaking is super hard. Filmmaking is super hard. My first world problems turned into my first world film problems. And to see her get through every day what she was going through, um, dealing with the past, but also she had a lot of, present challenges, and she'll have a lot of future challenges. So I think resilience is, to draw that parallel is weird between the film world and her world, but really she's taught me how to get up every morning and continue on with whatever you're working on. Because, if she can do it after what she's been through, it's not that hard for me to continue on this indie doc path.
If there's one lesson you would like audiences to learn from Mediha's documentary, and if they get a chance to meet her at one of these screenings, what would it be?
Sorry, what would it?
What lesson would you like audiences to take?
Yeah, I'll just go back to a point I made earlier. We tend to pay attention to these, we come out to film festivals and film screenings, and we learn about these issues, and I think that's wonderful. But I would just urge audiences to care about these issues while they're happening, because right now they are happening. Other similar atrocities are occurring. So, as I said, Medea and her brothers and her community, that's the human cost of these conflicts. And while you may move on, and while the world may move on quickly, they do not. So hopefully, if they come and see this film and meet Mediha, they can see sort of the the cost of what's going on present day, because we're 10 years on from the Yazidi community, the Yazidi genocide, and now, yes, she has a documentary, and her voice is being raised, and her story is spreading. But the genocide, as she says, continues to this day. So hopefully, of course, we want to raise awareness, and just continue to have the platform and the tools to share her own story.
Well, Mediha has already opened in New York and will open in Los Angeles at the Laemmle Royal on October 18th, along with additional cities on October 25th. Where can we find you and the film on social media and your official website so we can connect with you and see where new local screenings will be popping up?
Yeah, sure. The best place is Mediha Film on Instagram, or medihafilm.com. We update those, especially social media, hourly, I feel. And then I'm linked, Hasan Oswald. I'm linked on the Mediha Film page in the description. And yeah, that's sort of the best way to keep track of us. There's also a newsletter and whatnot, but yeah, launching this Friday. Very, very excited in LA, and then hopefully taking this around the world.
Yeah. Before I let you go, Hassan, I want to ask you one more question about Mediha. A lot of people that have migrated from suffering, having genocide, faced genocide, war, famine, etc., uh, have this desire never to return home. Like it's cut off, when Jimmy Carter betrayed the Shah of Iran, there are Iranians that sit there and go, that's not my Iran. I will never go to Iran unless there's a regime change or something of that sort. Is there something in Mediha that she's like, yes, I would love to go back to Iraq at some point? Or is it very much once my brothers get here, forget Iraq? Yes, I'm Yazidi, but what we suffered there is not worth reliving even on a visit.
Yeah, and I won't speak to her. I won't speak for her on that. I can tell you how I think she may be leaning. She's very happy over here now. A lot of bad memories over there. But she would love to return to the region at some point in her life, if not for anything else, to inspire change and hopefully bring some change. So I'm not sure her timeline on that. I know she's settling in here very well, but in my opinion, she would love to return at some point.
Fantastic. Hasan Oswald, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. Against Mediha is already in New York, coming to LA October 18th, and in select theaters October 25th. It's been a great pleasure chatting with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.